Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's great to be with you today. I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me. I know that I'm not entitled to your time. You share it. And so it would not be wise of me to not be appreciative of that. So thank you each day for taking time to join me to break down and talk your Raiders. For those of you that are new, and we have grown so much, many of you are, every single year when the schedule comes out, I make my season prediction. And then I go back, and obviously I'm at every practice or training camp and go through all of the preseason and all of the accoutrements that go into a NFL football season. And then just prior to the season, the first week, after seeing everything, I then make my predictions on the season. And these are the predictions of which I hold myself to a standard. Now, this is my fifth year covering the Raiders. The first 4 years, three of those years were very successful predictions. One of them was a complete and utter disaster. It'd be unfair of me to pretend like it wasn't because it was. So, let me tell you how I break a year down. When I look at a game, there are 10 elements that go into every football game. And I learned how to do this years ago from people in the NFL. Um, and I do it with college, I do it with pros, I do it with all of them. There are 10 sets of criteria that go into every game for me. And then if it comes down and it's tied 5-5, I always give the benefit to the home team. Always. If it's not 5-5, then of course I don't. But that's how I look at and gauge every game. I go over rosters. I go over now. I certainly can't predict injuries. I can't predict all that. So sometimes you have a bad year and it's not your fault. The year I made a bad prediction was all my fault. There was no excuse for it. It was all Hondo. I own it. But sometimes though that does legitimately happen. Then I go through and I look at and say, okay, so the best case scenario I have for the team is X amount of wins. And the worst case scenario, and I'm explaining this in a minute because it's not how you think. And then if there's any gap, I go with a number in the middle. So let me explain what I mean by that. I don't go on, I mean, every team could go 0-16 and every team could theoretically go 16-0. But I look at for this team based on what they have, what is the least they could do and still be a reasonably successful season, and what's the best that they can do. So let me give you an example. When I looked at the predictions when the schedule came out, I looked at it and thought, okay, the best the Raiders can do, in my opinion, the way I grade every game, is 11 wins and still be a successful season, and 9 wins and still be a successful season with the roster and everything they had. So I picked 10. I went in the middle. And again, 3 of my 4 years have been successful. The 4th year was just horrible, and that was Josh McDaniels' first season. And this is my 5th year prediction. So here we go. I have analyzed every team's roster. I have looked at every single game. I've looked at the Raiders, and I'm going to go through. And this is my final season prediction that I can be held accountable for with you. The first game, obviously, coming up, they head to Allegiant Southwest to take on the Bolts for a 4:05 Eastern game, 1:05 Pacific. And I think the Raiders are going to go down there. And here's how I think this game is really going to play out. I think the Bolts are going to be a very good team under Jim Harbaugh. He's a proven good coach and a developer. They're not going to be there at the start of the season. I think they're going to be better at the end, but I don't think they're going to be there at the beginning. The Raiders come in, and when you look at this Raider roster, there are reasons for optimism everywhere. Now, you may say, and I think it would be a germane argument, what about the quarterback situation? That's a great point. And let's just take the head off the elephant right now and talk about it. Years ago, I was having a conversation with Don Shula. And he said something to me, the legendary Miami Dolphin coach, that I just thought was brilliant. And it had never processed in my mind before, but it did now. And he talked about you never know what you're going to get with a rookie. And the reason the conversation came about was I was just talking to him about Dan Marino and how good he was as a rookie. And he said, you just never know. He told me, he goes, you have hopes, but I never really have expectations of a rookie, which I thought was fascinating. He said, because you've never seen them do anything in a live NFL football game. They were drafted because they showed gifts that you thought they could be something, but in the NFL is a completely different animal. And so he said to me, he goes, one of the things that people don't understand is that if I go sign a free agent and he has a proven track record of doing something in the NFL, I don't have just hope. He goes, I have expectations because he has a proven track record. Now, taking all of that, and I think we would all agree, Don Shula is a voice that's worth being heard in the National Football League. So when I look at teams, I have higher expectations of a Christian Wilkins because he has a proven track record, or even a Darnay Holmes, the new free agent pickup, well, not free agent, but the new free agent, pickup that they got from the Giants, than I do DeCamerion Richardson. And I think DCam's going to be really good. But with DCam, it's hope. With Darnay, we've seen him with Patrick Graham perform at a very high level previously. So whereas with DCam, I have hope, Darnay, I have expectation. Having said that, I want to go back to this. The biggest question mark, and I know you all are going to be like, okay, thank you, Mr. Obvious, but the biggest question mark on this 2024 Raider team is quarterback. However, when you look at the quarterback situation for the Las Vegas Raiders, we saw what Aiden O'Connell did last year coming down the stretch, last 5 games, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. We saw that. That was reality. That was living in Realville, as I like to say. That wasn't, something he did at Central Florida or Texas El Paso or Indiana Hoosiers. He did that in the National Football League against some very good teams. Not all of them, but some of them. Good or not, he still did it against NFL talent. Gardner Minshew, I cannot believe the disrespect that Gardner's gotten. I understand it gets tempered because he didn't improve during training camp. That's fair. But when you look at his QBR rating last year and what he did, and you look at a lot of things that he did, became a Pro Bowl alternate. I mean, people are acting like, well, he's just a scab. Well, that's when you say things like that, you literally minimize your opinion. People with a football sense are like, okay, I'm not even going to listen to that guy or gal. It is fair to say he's been on 3 teams that went with younger quarterbacks that didn't want him. That's totally fair. 100%. And it should be said because it's reality. But to just discredit him when he has a proven track record of success is equally foolish. So here's how I'm approaching the 2024 season for the Raiders. They have 2 quarterbacks with a proven track record of accomplishment at a good level in this league. Facts. Neither was impressive this offseason because they didn't go forward, but neither also went backward. Facts. So if you use what you've heard me say before as future performance as indicative, past performance as indicative of future expectations, I believe you have a right to say, I expect one of these 2 quarterbacks to step up and perform at a good level. Number 1. Number two, I think you also have a right to look at this Raiders squad and say there are weapons all over the field. You're not looking for either guy to be Patrick Mahomes. You're simply looking for one of them to be a quality game manager. Both have demonstrated that. So, with that said, and taking that into your quantitative thinking, here are my predictions for the year. The Raiders go down to LA this weekend. The Bolts are going to be better, but they're going to still be learning new systems on all three phases: special teams, offense, and defense. They are in a very tough spot financially and cap. And before those who looking for the low hanging fruit of ignorance, who want to blame Telesco for everything, I've shared with you many times, there were decisions made to put the Bolts in that position that were not his. I don't believe he would tell you that because he's a man of integrity. But people who are still connected to them have told me that. I'm going to believe them. Not because I think Telesco's a liar. I'm going to believe him because I think he's a man of integrity and there's things he wouldn't say. And so people who have no vested interest, no dog in the hunt, tell me that. I think the Raiders have a right to expect one of these quarterbacks to step up. There are weapons everywhere. There are weapons across the defense. There are weapons across the offense. And I believe the Raiders do enough to go down to the Bolts and get the win, and they start the season 1-0. Then week 2, they head out to a team that I think there is a very good chance they're going to be in the Super Bowl. Very good chance. The Baltimore Ravens. You look at Lamar and all that he does. I think he's a very underrated quarterback. In fact, I'm still shocked that when the Baltimore Ravens told him, okay, you can go out and look for a trade with any other team, that there was no team that stepped up and said, yes. Foolishness to me. Foolishness. I think they need to let Lamar be Lamar. He is a good thrower. He's not great, but he is a very good thrower. But you saw situations last year where they tried to make him into a Patrick Mahomes, and that's not who he is. You have to let Lamar be Lamar. I think they're going to do more of that this year, which means he is going to throw, but he's going to throw it more on his terms rather than trying to make him into a pocket passer. They've got a very good defense, tremendous special teams. I think going east for an early game is just very, very difficult for a team, especially one like the Raiders, and I think they lose to Baltimore. So they start the season 1-1. Then they come home and play the Panthers. Now, let me tell you how bad the Panthers are. If the Panthers were a college team, they would try to schedule themselves for homecoming. Bryce Young is a very good kid, not an NFL quarterback. He's just, there are too many question marks with him. I think he's a guy who was a legendary college, but the college game is not the NFL. And I think the Raiders take care of business against them, start the season 2-1. Then they host the Broncos. I think the Broncos, I think there's a lot of hype with the Broncos, but hype ain't reality. Welcome to the Death Star. In the words of the great immortal Peter Griffin, pow, right in the kisser. Raiders start 3-1. Then, I mean, the Raiders. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. That is supposed to be the Browns, not the Broncos. Sorry, I misread it. My notes. It is the Browns. I think the Browns come in. I think the Browns are a franchise with a great defense. I am not a buyer in Deshaun, and has nothing to do with the off-field stuff. I'm just not a buyer in him at all. Not at all. I think it's going to be a very tough game. I think the Browns game is going to be ugly. Ugly. UGA. L-Y, you ain't got no alibi, you ugly. It's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be uglier than me in the shower. It's why I don't turn the lights on. But the Raiders win. And how many know Al Davis didn't say, just win pretty, baby? No, he said, just win, baby. Raiders start 3-1 with a big win over the Brownies. Then the Broncos. They head to the Broncos. Again, though, I think they're overhyped. I think the Raiders got a little bit of swag. They got a little bit of confidence. They're feeling good. They're 3-1. They go up and pound the Broncos. I've told you all along what I think of Sean Payton. Tremendous coach at New Orleans. But there are a lot of people in New Orleans that thought he thinks he's the smartest man in the room. And I'm going to tell you something. Patrick Graham walks into any room he wants and he's the smartest man in the room. Sean Payton walks into a room and thinks he's the smartest man. The difference is the smart ones don't have to tell you because they still know what they don't know. I think the Raiders go up to Denver, get the big win. So now they're 4-1 to start the year. Then they come home to face the Steelmen, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Come to town. Mike Tomlin. Great coach. Great coach. Quarterback situation is ugly. I think the Raiders do enough to win. I don't think it's a pretty game either. I think it's going to look a lot like the Brownies. I just don't see it. I don't think this is going to be. I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's just going to be smash mouth. It's going to look like an old school mud slobber knocker, just bam, bam, bam. I think there'd be some people who don't know football that are going to think, oh, this is boring. There are going to be a lot of big hits, two good defenses, but I just don't think there's going to be enough Zamir White with some play action, and I think the Raiders win. And then they start 5-1. 5-1. Then, interesting game. Week 7. They head to Allegiant Southwest to take on the Los Angeles Rams and Matthew Stafford. I'm going to tell you right here. I think it's going to be a great crowd, probably 50-50, 60-40 Rams, maybe 55-45 Rams, but great Raider crowd. Great Raider crowd. But I think the Rams will be too much. I think people are sleeping a little bit on the Rams this year. Don't think they're a Super Bowl team, but I think they're sleeping on the Rams a little bit. Raiders fall to 5-2. But man, if Raider Nation just buys up all those tickets and it's like a 70-30 home crowd like it's going to be for the Bolts, ooh, that crowd could turn it. In my prediction, I had the Rams game I think it was 6-4 or 5-5, one of them. So a big crowd there could change that for sure. Then they host the Chiefs week 8. I think that Rams game is going to be brutally tough. I think that's going to be a fist fight. You got the Brownies, you got the Steelmen, then you got the Rams, and it's just physicality. I think the Raiders are going to be a little banged up coming into the Chiefs game. And although I think it's going to be a good game, I think that, Chiefs end up winning it and winning this game at home. I mean, at the Raiders' home. And I think the Raiders fall to 5-3. Now, hear me out. Because I think the Raiders are really beat up going into that Chiefs game. That's why I think they lose it. But stay with me because I think this thread, if you stay with me, is going to reappear. Then they go to the Bengals where I think they put up a fight, but they're injured. And I think that Joe Burrow gets the win 5-4 on the year. Week 10 is a bye week. And do they need the bye week where they got it? This team gets a chance to get healthy, get better, but then they head to Miami to take on the Dolphins. Tough, tough, tough place to play. I think they play really well. I think they lose this one on a last second. I think they got the lead, and at the very end, Tua hits Tyreek. They're able to get a field goal and win it. So now the Raiders are 5-5. But wait, there's more. And I'm not selling Ginzu knives. Now, then I think the Raiders get exactly what the Raiders need to get back right. An inter-divisional game. AFC West rival, the Broncos, come to the Death Star. Man, the Raiders make it a clean sweep. The Broncos are just what the doctor ordered. If Peyton hasn't given up on Bo Nix by then, I think you'll see 3 interceptions by the Raiders. One of them returned by Jack Jones, the NFL leader in interceptions. Raiders turn to 6-5. Then they head up to Arrowhead. Oh, what a game that's going to be. And the reason I'm excited is I love football. Who doesn't love football? I mean, what kind of a meatball doesn't enjoy football? I had a guy the other day that I'm not really into football. What you talking about, Willis? Some of you kids are like, what does that mean? Was the guy's name Willis? Google it. Just Google, what you talking about, Willis? Those of you who are my age, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Classic. One of the greatest TV shows of all time. Different Strokes. Loved it. Gary Coleman, underrated actor. Okay. The Raiders head up there. Taylor Swift is in the house. It's Black Friday. You know what I love about Black Friday? I don't even know why it's called Black Friday, but it's the day after Christmas when everybody goes Christmas shopping. This is the coolest thing about having a wife who's a Raider fan. She's like, Black Friday shopping? Are you kidding? The Raiders are playing. Thank you to the NFL schedule makers. I think the Raiders go up there. They're healthy. They're mad. They're mad. They're furious. They know they could have beat the Chiefs, but they were just beaten up and ran out of steam at Allegiant. Second year in a row. National television. Taylor Swift is in the house. Who knows? By then, she may have even dumped Travis, so he's in a bad mood. Who cares? Whatever. And the Raiders show up. Antonio Pierce. Can you imagine that? His pregame speech will be able to just peel paint. Gentlemen, we had these guys by the throat at home. We were hurt. We ran out of steam. Well, I want you to beat them so bad that Taylor breaks up with Travis. Can you imagine her just walking out of the stadium with a text? See ya. Oh, that'd be epic. The Raiders go up there and do what they did last year. It's going to be cold. From a guy like me from the Midwest, man, that was beautiful last year. Just bitter cold. Bitter. Yeah. It's going to be cold. It's going to be wet. It's going to be miserable. And the Raiders are going to be like, yeah, tonight we dine in hell. National TV audience. Raiders get the win. 7-5. Then they head out east to take on the Buccaneers. Going to be a very interesting game. I give the Raiders the loss, 7-6. Then they come home to face the Falcons. And not just the Falcons, it's the Falcons on Monday Night Football. The eyes of the nation are zeroed in on the Raider Nation. Can you imagine? Max Crosby stands up, gives a talk to the team. Then all of a sudden you hear a hush as Zamir White stands, this quiet, humble kid. He looks like a piece of granite, chiseled. Looks at his teammates and says, "Boys, just give me the rock. I'll handle the rest." Monday Night Football. Zamir White's coming out party to the nation again after what he did 2 weeks previous at the Chiefs on national TV. He does it again. He goes for over a hundo, not a hondo, a hundo. He rushes for 126 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Raiders shut down the Falcons, 8-6. Then the Jaguars come to town. Trevor Lawrence. This is a team that's on the uptick. I'll tell you what I think. The Raiders are very young. And one thing I have learned over the years is young players make young player mistakes. And I don't know who it's going to be, but I just have this is the game. This has the feel of that game where a young player is going to make a young mistake and the Raiders are going to lose. I think that they'll lose this game and fall to 8-7. Now, there may be a game earlier in the year where I say they're going to win and a rookie makes a mistake, so then they make it up here. This could be the makeup game. But I think they're 8-7 after week 16. But then they travel post Christmas, pre New Year's Eve. Yeah, they're taking on Derek Carr, but they love Derek. He's a lot of their friends, and a lot of them don't even know him. The roster's been so turned over. But the guys on this team love Derek. They're not looking at this, oh, I'm going to pay him back. No, they love him. They want to beat him because it's their brother. But they're angry because the week before they know they let a Jags game go they should have won. And they're mad. I can picture this like it's already happened. AP gets up in front of the team. He ain't peeling paint. Air Force Ones, hoodie. AP says, "Gentlemen, I ain't got to say nothing. Last week, you cost yourself a win. This is redemption day. Do you?" Mic drop. I think the Raiders are going to pound the Saints. I think they'll have their most sacks that game. Derek Carr is going to spend the day on his back. Big win. 9-7. Then week 18. The Bolts are back in town. The Bolts are back in town. And they're better. But so are the Raiders. AP stands in front of that team and says, "Gentlemen, we already beat last year's record. But we're not about beating last year's record. We're about beating the best that we can. This isn't about playing the Bolts. It isn't about Jim Harbaugh. It isn't about anything else. This is about us. Let's go get that 10th win and make a statement about a wild card." In the words of the prophet Tone Loc, let's do it. I think Allegiant is going to be, to use the term that the kids use, lit. I think that place is going to be so loud that I'm going to want to hear ear protection in the press box. And oh, by the way, I won't. It is going to be a football magnifique atmosphere as the Raiders make their obsession with the oblong, the ellipsoid nuts. Nuts. And I think the Raiders end the regular season on a high. Remember last year when they ended it with the crowd, AP? I think it ends up with, it's not a cheer for AP, although they love him. I think it's a cheer of Raiders. I think you see Raider Nation finally grasping they're headed in the right direction. I don't think 2024 is going to be pretty. I don't. I think there's going to be a lot of gritty, a lot of scraping the pride and just battling it out. I mean, let's all be brutally honest. Most of the Chiefs season is pretty. It's fun football to watch. If you're not a Raider fan, I think there's going to be a lot of people saying, "Oh, that isn't fun football. It's ground and pound and a lot of physicality. It's going to be old school football that's going to make John Madden and Al Davis hover over Allegiant Stadium with the smell of the fresh cut grass and that chlorophyll rising up like incense to heaven. And all of those Raider greats, can you imagine Jim Otto in heaven? This is going to be Jim Otto football." Yes, yes. This looks like the Raiders. As I've traveled the country having these meetups with fans, oh, it's been great. But you want to know what the number one thing I hear is? I was in San Antonio for a meetup earlier this year. It was a great meetup, probably the best we've ever had. Great crowd, great people. And one of the guys was there with his wife, and it was just a precious, wonderful couple. Just salt of the earth people. In fact, I want to show you something. Just salt of the earth, wonderful, wonderful people. And the guy said to me, I'll never forget this because he said it to me in front of my wife. He said, "Uncle Hondo, I'm tired of my team wearing my uniform, but not performing like my team." I mean, I thought the guy was going to cry. My wife even said, I thought he was going to cry. That moved me. That is one thing I tell everybody who will listen. Raider Nation is so freaking passionate. Raider fans love their team. They don't like it. They love it. That's why when the Raiders lose or the Raiders do something stupid, Raider fan takes it personal. And people are like, "Well, why do you even care? It's just a game." It's not to Raider Nation. I want to show you something. This is, I keep it right here in my desk. When I was in San Antonio, they gave me this it's not really a challenge coin, but it's just, I mean, look at that. Al Davis, cross swords, the team. It sits right here on my desk. Sits right here. And the reason it sits on my desk is because every day when I write articles, I think about you guys in Raider Nation. I think about how much you care, how much it matters to you. And I literally keep this right there because I want to remind myself, who do I work for? I don't work for Sports Illustrated. I mean, I do, but you guys are my bosses. And I know how much you guys care. And I'll never forget this as long as I live, because as I left that night, it literally hit me. I mean, this guy was almost moved to tears because he was tired of watching a team wear his team's colors and logo that didn't look like his team. Now, this team may win 9 games, may win 11. It's not going to be pretty, but I'm going to tell you what it is going to be. It's going to look like Raider football again. It's going to look like it. It's going to look like we're headed somewhere. You guys are going to be able to see at the end of the year, okay, we may need this position, we may need that position, we may need to go add this, do this, whatever. But at least it's starting to look like Raider football. It's going to be a fun year. Now, here's the thing I'm going to challenge you with. It's been a long off season. Enjoy the season. There's going to be some wins that happen along this route that I didn't predict, and there's going to be some losses I didn't predict. Enjoy the year. Have fun with it. You got the coach that you wanted, most of you. You got an old school mentality coming back. Football season's back. And Uncle Hondo's prediction, 10-7. God bless y'all. Appreciate you. See you tomorrow. We have a big story coming tomorrow. I'm Mark Davis.